The evil Yongxiong group was arrested by the Anhui police, which caused a sensation across the country. Some people celebrate the demise of such a suspected black, evil and terrorist organization, while others feel that the end is coming. 11 Er and Yang Beilao in The White-Haired Girl were still characters in literature more than 70 years ago, but more than 70 years later, there are thousands of 11 Er and Yang Beilao in red socialist countries. Back then, Huang Shiren was nothing more than a bully landlord and old fortune, but now Huang Shiren has evolved into a collectivized and organized organization, which seriously threatens the security, stability, and socialist nature of the country. Yongxiong himself admits that the industry he is engaged in is in a gray fringe area, with nearly 20,000 employees and offices in various cities across the country. Who are these employees of Yongxiong? Many of them are underworld members and gangsters with criminal records. It is very scary for a company to gather such forces together. Yongxiong has been established for nearly 10 years, killing countless Yang Beilao and making countless white-haired girls panic all day long. The Yongxiong group used methods such as text message threats, telephone bombing, explosive address book and harassing relatives and colleagues to collect collections, and even pretended to be judicial organs, executive bureaus, etc. To send fake court summons. To collect debts, Yongxiong's employees once falsely reported that there was a bomb on the bus, which caused great panic in the society. On April 3rd, April 10th, and May 19th, the Anhui police cross-provincially enforced the law and successively intervened in the Jishao branch of the Group Weikan Company, the Huihua branch, the Xionghan branch and the Shaoyang branch of the group for investigation, and a total of 179 employees were arrested. They were forcibly taken to Anhui, and were subjected to compulsory criminal measures such as residential surveillance, release on bail pending trial, criminal detention, and arrest. At present, a total of 3 employees have been arrested on suspicion of picking quarrels and provoking trouble. After the employee was arrested, Yongxiong Group released a long article, claiming that he was a kind-hearted little white rabbit who was harmless to humans and animals, boasting that the group had made indelible contributions to the country. Then the conversation turned and exposed his naked fangs and began to threaten that if Yongxiong fell, the country's financial system would collapse. Put forward 3 strong demands to wage war on the country. All 3 demands came with words of command and threat. The first is to let the Hunan police investigate. Yongxiong's executives are lawyers. As a legal person, don't you know the practice of using police from different places in major cases? Who can mobilize the Anhui police to arrest so many people, and your local police have to cooperate obediently? The police from Anhui must have been approved by the Ministry of Public Security and the Central Committee to go to Hunan to arrest people with great fanfare. The second point is to directly order the Hunan Political and Legal Committee to investigate the Anhui police. This tone makes Beijing tremble. Yongxiong directly determined the nature of the Anhui police, handling the case illegally. It is really puzzling that Yongxiong dared to order Hunan political and legal officials in such a tone. The third point is the key point, which is exactly the same as the tone of the collection: avoid triggering mass incidents that affect the overall situation of social stability. This is in the middle of a naked threat, which means that your regime will not be stable even if I fall. If you don't let him go, I will rise up immediately. It's scary. Such a terrorist organization is really capable of fighting a country. Yang Beilao passed out immediately after reading Yongxiong's article with a sigh of relief, and the white-haired girl had to hide in the mountains again to observe the development of the situation secretly. Our ancestors overthrew the 3 mountains that were pressing on the people through bloodshed and sacrifice, and established a new China, always following an unswerving path. Although we still inherit the red gene in the new era and the new era, it will not change. The emergence of the new Huang Shiren is a great irony, but the country still takes action to pull out the cancer of Huang Shiren, and return the bright sunshine of socialism. Master Li is in his 40s. He claims to be a countryman in Sichuan. He has no culture. He has worked in Zhejiang for more than 20 years and has done many jobs. He has bought a house in the surrounding area of Hangzhou, and his 2 children are also nearby. I was studying, and I bought a car and drove online car hailing 2 years ago, but the online car hailing business is difficult, the competition is getting more and more fierce, and the platform takes a commission, so I feel the pressure of life and work. After knowing that I work in a certain hospital, I said I am very envious, saying that it is good for you to be educated, and you work in a big hospital with stable work and good pay. The different hardships of each job, who knows who does it, so I also complained about the difficulties and hardships in my work, chatting and chatting, everyone actually formed a consensus. In today's society, everyone is not easy, everyone is under pressure from life and work. Because the destination we went to was a red cultural and educational base, the topic naturally talked about the comparison of living standards before and after the war and the reasons why people are stressed today. Although the driver is humble and uneducated, his thinking about society and life is very insightful. He said that compared with the past, people's living standards are much better. They eat well, wear well, live well, and travel in various ways. People with better conditions have bought cars, which was unimaginable before. But most people do not have a sense of satisfaction and happiness. Why? Because the goal pursued by the whole society is too single. Everyone is looking at money. In fact, when it comes to money, I don't know how much richer I am than before, but I can still feel the pressure from all directions. Why? Because they are all comparing each other, whose house is bigger, whose car is better, and whose school their children are studying in. Always comparing back and forth like this makes people breathless. I am poor in today's society. The gap between the rich and the rich is huge, and if you always do horizontal comparisons, how can anyone not be stressed? Nowadays, many people are dissatisfied with the status quo and feel it is unfair, but are you willing to go back to the past? I definitely don't want to go back to the backwater Sichuan countryside. Do you think this driver is very powerful? As an ordinary person, without the ability to change the general environment, but able to understand his own starting point and rationally analyze the pain points of public emotions, there is a high probability that his life troubles will be much less. At the last moment of his life, a patient donated his organs, which helped 4 people regain their lives and brought light to many people. His name is Long Zhenyu, and he was a graduate student at Wuhan University of Geosciences. He was only 24 years old when he died. His actions are so great, but what I cherish more is his fate. His life trajectory should not be like this. Long Zhenyu was born in a very ordinary family. His father used to be a migrant worker, working on construction sites all day long, and struggling to support his family. In an accident at work, he broke his leg and lost part of his labor force. He can only rely on farming and odd jobs to make ends meet. The hemp rope is specially picked and broken, and bad luck only finds the poor. In 2018, Long Zhenyu's mother was diagnosed with liver cancer. The high cost of treatment left the family with a foreign debt of more than 300,000 yuan. In the family at that time, besides Long Zhenyu, there were 2 younger sisters who were studying. One can imagine the embarrassment of this family. Accidents, diseases, and foreign debts are like mountains, weighing people down. As the eldest son in the family, Long Zhenyu, who was planning to take the exam, gave up. He chose to work as soon as possible so that he could pay off the family's foreign debts and allow his younger sisters to complete their studies smoothly. The moment he shouldered the responsibility, he might have written a footnote of fate for what happened in the future. In mid-March this year, Long Zhenyu accidentally fell during school sports and sprained his knee. The doctor said that he needed an external fixation knee brace for treatment. The cost of the bracket is more than 1,000 yuan. For Long Zhenyu, this was a huge expense and a heavy burden. Because of family reasons, he lived a very frugal life, and he would think for a long time about every penny he spent. The winter in Wuhan is very cold, and he is reluctant to buy himself a warm down jacket, not to mention this bracket that costs thousands of dollars. So, he went online and bought a set of simple braces worth more than 100 yuan, which he fixed on his injured knee. But it was because of this move that he planted the seeds of disaster for his later tragic fate. Due to lack of scientific guidance, after fixing the braces purchased online, not only did the injured leg not get relief, but it swelled after a few days, and the injury became more and more serious. At the end of March, Long Zhenyu suffered a sudden cardiac arrest in the dormitory. He was diagnosed with pulmonary embolism leading to respiratory and cardiac arrest. After being sent to the hospital, although his heartbeat resumed, his condition continued to deteriorate. Miracles did not happen. After nearly 2 months of seeing off with the god of death, Long Zhenyu finally left. Although his life was short, he was like Xinyu. Even after he passed away, he illuminated the path of many people. His story moved me, but made me regret it even more. This is a boy in poverty. The reason is that the fall was not handled properly, which led to swelling of the lower limbs, venous thrombosis, eventually pulmonary embolism. The bracket of more than 1000 yuan is the distance between him and Shen. Someone said, I lost a lot of money, I went there at a young age to save 1000 yuan. Don't save for your own health. Seeing such remarks, I suddenly felt very uncomfortable. Don't open God's perspective to such a boy. Didn't Long Xinyu know that the stent customized by the doctor would be better? Between more than 1000 yuan and more than 100 yuan, what may be saved is 1 month's living expenses, the cost of the cram school for the younger sisters, and the money that the father can earn after working hard for 10 days and a half months. For some people, more than 1000 yuan is not worth mentioning. But for children from poor families, it is a huge amount of money that is repeatedly weighed on the balance, and many things can even be sacrificed for it. If you haven't experienced the desperation and coldness of others' poverty, you are not qualified to point fingers at their lives. 02. People in the world often say that money is endless and life is only once. But for many people, this is not the case. Remember that farmer named Zhenyan Liang? Relying on the family's 4 acres of Susukita, Zhenyan Liang supports his frail and sick wife, and the family's life can barely support. A sudden illness caused him to collapse on the bed, and the doctor diagnosed a massive arterial embolism of unknown cause in both legs. The minimum treatment cost is more than 300,000 yuan, not to mention the follow-up maintenance. This poor family only earns 10,000 to 20,000 a year, and the wife spent 7,000 to 8,000 on medical treatment alone. Where does the money come from? The clankingly poor family couldn't afford any money at all, so he could only go home and wait to die. Because of the pain, the silent farmer wailed in pain all night long. The unconscious legs gradually festered and pus, exuding a rotten smell, exposing the bones. One day, when he turned over, he found several maggots. Anyway, if you don't have money for medical treatment, you are dead. Zhenyan Liang made an astonishing move. He found a hacksaw and a fruit knife, bit the towel in his mouth, and sawed his right leg 15 centimeters from the thigh of his right leg like sawing wood. I didn't feel it when I was sawing the meat. It was completely necrotic. It hurts when I saw the bone. Once, twice. It took 10 minutes to saw. When the right leg rolled to the ground, the hacksaw blade also broke in two. He spat out the towel, and at the same time, there were 4 broken teeth because of the pain. This news took my breath away. With money, he can solve his pain. Unfortunately, he lacks the most of his money. Without money, he was sick and could only go home and wait to die. Without money, he could only use the most brutal method, sawing off his legs for treatment. Others trade money for health, he can only trade health for money. Because health is the only thing he can lose. After seeing too much money and money on the internet, it is easy to forget that there are still people living so hard in this world. We have seen too many news like this. In the hospital, the doctor advised the old man to have a CT scan. He held up the phone and asked his son, wiping his tears, whether he could do a CT scan for 500 yuan. In the ward, the old father had no money and wanted to give up the treatment. The son knelt on the ground and cried bitterly, begging him not to give up. Money will definitely find a way. A while ago, I saw a netizen say something. He met a man in the Guangzhou subway. From his he should be a construction worker. He cried and said to the person on the other end of the phone, my father is dead, I have to take him back to Sichuan, please give me 500 yuan salary first. That end may have been a refusal. He cried desperately on the spot, my father is dead, I don't have 200 yuan on me, I can't go back. After working for 20 days, you can just give me 500 yuan. There are really people who can be so sad and troubled. Even if you are standing upright to make money, you can only be so humble and bow your head to ask for it. Dignity and fairness are not as good as a full meal or a train ticket. In this world, some people spend money like water, while others worry about what to eat next. Some people are rich in clothes and jade, while others are rolling in the mud and planing food. The movie Big Buddha Plus said, many people always like to talk about fairness and justice, but in some people's lives, these 4 words should not exist. After all, it is powerless just to hold a job. How can I have the strength to talk about these things? 03. Someone on Zillow asked, At what moment did you feel that the world is suffering? Nearly 20,000 answers are extremely sad. A medical worker had said that in the neonatal heart center, a couple from the countryside were weeping while holding their infant baby. A very temperamental woman in a coat persuaded from the side, "Is it really dead? That's 50,000 to 60,000 yuan. The man shook his head feebly and said, "Thank you, sister, I'm sorry to trouble you. We bought train tickets for the afternoon to go back to our hometown. The family can't cure it, let's have another one." The young wife couldn't bear it anymore and burst into tears. This story makes me sad every time I read it. They tried their best, and there was nothing else they could do. Is 50,000 to 60,000 a lot? If it saves a small life, it's not much. But for this family, having another child is more realistic than saving a child. In this world, there is a strange law. Some people are rich and successful, with flowers blooming, and fire cooking oil. Some people are poor, suffering, many disasters, misfortunes never come singly. Ms. Wan, 51, from Henan, was diagnosed with lymphoma. She was injected with 1.2 million injections of anti-cancer drugs. 1 month later, she went to the hospital for a review and found that 4/5 of the cancer cells had disappeared. Money, sometimes really saves lives. There is a line in "I'm not the god of medicine, life is money." It's just that some people can afford it and some people can't. There was a topic that was swiping the screen on social platforms, the life of a Chinese rich man in Ukraine. 4 Chinese billionaires went to Ukraine to receive embryonic stem cell therapy to buy health with money. The sky-high price of needles costs nearly 600,000 yuan per injection, and it takes 5 to 8 injections to make you 30 years younger. That is to spend 4 million. In the face of longevity and health, they pay the bill almost without blinking an eye. It doesn't matter if it doesn't work, as long as there are no side effects. You see, the world is not fair. Some people can't even protect their lives because of a little money. Some people pay without blinking an eye for a life extension needle that doesn't know the effect. Is money everything? For the rich, maybe not, but for the poor, maybe that's the straw they want but can't get. Just like the line in the movie Woman. Although money can't buy happiness, but money can't lead to misfortune. Money can bring us more than just the satisfaction of desires. For ordinary people, it is a sense of security, the ability to give their families a better life, and every time, in the choice between money and health, they can choose health without hesitation. In this world, there are still too many people working hard for a few taels of silver. There are also too many people who gritted their teeth and persisted in the poor daily life. Lu Yu wrote in Encounters, "We may have all experienced or are experiencing the darkest moments of our lives. It is a long, dark, cold, and hopeless tunnel. Only when you pass through, can you welcome the moment when the willows are dark and the flowers are bright." People don't live above board all the time. They want to hold their heads high and move forward, but they don't know when they fall into a pit and get covered in mud. It is very sad to see the news that a 70-year-old man in Hangzhou was forced to commit suicide because the price of the medicine he took for a long time soared 10 times and he did not want to burden his children. It seems that people have long been accustomed to such tragedies and are used to them. People no longer call for the implementation of public medical care like most countries in Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan, and they no longer call for the government to stop the explosion of drug prices, but silently accept the medicine sun, rope sun, water sun and so on, to end the cruel reality of providing for the poor elderly. Why is this? Why has it been demonized as the national economy is on the verge of collapse? In Mao Zedong's era, the common people can implement free medical care, free education, free housing, and free enjoyment of all public facilities and public resources, but now it is the world's second largest economy, China as a whole, as the engine of the world economy and entering the fast lane of economic development, as China's largest investment in the world's Belt and Road Initiative in human history, and as the largest creditor of the United States. China has implemented it in more than 180 countries around the world. In the case of free medical care, is it impossible to restore free medical care for the common people? And whoever mentions free medical care is called extreme left. In fact, the answer is very simple, because the officials who formulate medical policies use public medical care, and they don't spend money on seeing a doctor themselves, so they don't care how difficult it is for ordinary people to see a doctor. In order to ensure that their public health care has sufficient sources of funds, they reformed the welfare business that was originally free medical care for the common people into a profiteering industry for the national economy, turned China, the world's largest free medical insurance system, into the world's largest commercial health insurance system. However, the commercial medical insurance system is implemented in only a few countries such as the United States in the world, and the commercial medical insurance in the United States is limited to the rich and the middle class, while the poor at the bottom of society are still provided with free medical care borne by the state, and enjoy the same benefits as high-level Chinese officials. The free medical insurance borne by the state is the same. It can be seen that the lack of free medical care for ordinary people in China is entirely the result of the dual system of the medical system, and the result of officials enjoying public medical care and not participating in the commercialization of medical insurance. If Chinese officials, like the common people, implemented commercialized medical insurance reforms and spent money for medical treatment like the common people, I am afraid that China would have restored the universal free medical care system long ago. Officials in China implement medical care at public expense, and ordinary people implement commercial medical insurance. The result is not just that officials don't spend money on medical treatment, but ordinary people have to pay for medical treatment. What's even more terrifying is that ordinary people can't afford to see a doctor even if they spend money. Astronomical medical system. The medical reform in which officials do not spend money to see a doctor but only ordinary people spend money to see a doctor shows that Chinese officials have become the main body of the reform, and ordinary people have become the targets of reform. A piece of cake is divided between the officials and the common people. Of course, the officials have to cut the largest piece, keep what you have for yourself, and leave what is left for the common people. This completely inverts the rights and obligations between the government and the common people, turning free medical care, which was originally an obligation of the government's finances to the common people, into the right of the government's finances to charge sky-high medical expenses from the common people, and free medical care. Medical care, which should have been a right enjoyed by ordinary people, has become an obligation and burden for ordinary people to pay sky-high medical expenses. This is the drawback of the reform of China's medical system, as well as the drawbacks of other reforms. The way to overcome this malpractice is very simple, that is, to reverse the reversed rights and obligations between the government and the people, to reverse the reversed reform subject and reform object between officials and the people. As far as the first aspect is concerned, social welfare undertakings such as medical care, education, housing, and pensions should be separated from social securities. Social welfare undertakings are the obligations of the government to the common people, and cannot be turned into industries that make money from the common people. In terms of two aspects, the public should be the main body of the reform, and officials should be the object of the reform. Power should be locked in a cage and the keys should be handed over to the common people. In this way, all social reforms will naturally become a tool to serve the people, rather than a shackle that restrains the people. At present, it is necessary to put power in a cage and hand over the keys to the common people. It needs to be realized in two steps. The first step is to first implement the principle of equality between officials and the people of modern capitalism. All officials and ordinary people carry out the same reforms. All reform policies include all officials and ordinary people. Results. Power is caged through this step. The second step is to implement the socialist Paris Commune principle that the treatment of socialist officials should not be higher than the average treatment of the society on the basis of the realization of the equal reform. In the hands of the common people, it is up to the common people to decide whether or not to keep the officials' black hats. In order to prevent the phenomenon of anarchism when the masses decide that officials are black hats, and to further consolidate and strengthen the party's leadership, we should establish a cadre management system that combines the party's centralized and unified leadership with the mass line. The party organization appoints cadres to wear black hats and ordinary people dismiss cadres by removing their black hats to ensure that officials neither dare to violate the party's principles nor violate the interests of the masses, and can truly achieve the two political goals set by the top leaders. One is to lock power in a cage. And the second is implementing full process democracy. Only by allowing the common people to take off the black hat can power be truly locked in a cage, and only by letting the masses take off the black hat can the whole process of democracy be truly realized and avoid the disadvantages of capitalist ballot democracy that the common people have the right to vote but have no right to supervise. In short, the people's loss of free medical care is the result of the people's loss of sovereignty. To restore free medical care, people's sovereignty must be restored. This is not only a political issue of the distribution of power between the government and the people, but also a civilized issue of the human society. Rebuilding free medical care and other social welfare security systems is not only the essential requirement of the socialist system, but also the basic requirement of modern political civilization. Economic development is to allow people to enjoy more welfare. If even free medical care cannot be achieved, the purpose of economic development will be lost. As we often say, it is against the law of nature.